Section 42. The pain that arises afterwards during the course of existence in one who punishes himself. In one who devotes himself to the practice of mortification and austerity according to the vows of the naked ascetics. In one who starves through anger, and in one who hangs himself. This is the suffering rooted in self-violence. Section 43. And that arising in one who undergoes flogging, imprisonment, etc. at the hands of others is the suffering rooted in others' violence. So this birth is the basis for all this suffering. Hence this is said, now were no being born in hell again. The pain unbearable of scorching fires. And all the rest would then no footing gain. Therefore the sage pronounced that birth is pain. Many the sorts of pain that beasts endure, when they are flogged with whips and sticks and goads, since birth among them does this pain procure. Birth there is pain, the consequence is sure, while ghosts know pain in great variety. Through hunger, thirst, wind, sun and what not too. None, unless born there, knows this misery. So birth the sage declares this pain to be. In the world interspace, where demons dwell in searing cold and inspissated gloom, is pain requiring birth there for its spell. So with the birth the pain ensues as well. The horrible torment a being feels on coming out, when he has spent long months shut up inside the mother's womb. A hellish tomb of excrement would never come about without rebirth. That birth is pain, there is no room for doubt. But why elaborate? At any time or anywhere, can there exist a painful state if birth do not proceed? Indeed this sage so great, when he expounded pain, took care, first to declare rebirth as pain, the condition needed there. This, firstly, is the exposition of birth. Opening parenthesis. 2. Aging. Section 44. Aging is suffering. Aging is twofold. As a characteristic of whatever is formed, and in the case of a continuity, as the oldness of aggregates included in a single becoming, which oldness is known as brokenness and so on. Cm 3249. The latter is intended here. But this aging has as its characteristic the maturing, ripening, of aggregates. Its function is to lead on to death. It is manifested as the vanishing of youth. It is suffering because of the suffering due to formations and because it is a basis for suffering. Section 45. Aging is the basis for the bodily and mental suffering that arises owing to many conditions such as leadiness in all the limbs, decline and warping of the faculties, vanishing of youth, undermining of strength, loss of memory and intelligence, contempt on the part of others, and so on. Hence this is said, with leadiness in every limb, with every faculty declining, with vanishing of youthfulness, with memory and wit grown dim, with strength now drained by undermining, with growing unattractiveness to wife and family, and then, with dotage coming on, what pain alike of body and of mind a mortal must expect to find. Since aging all of this will bring, aging is well named suffering. This is the exposition of aging. Opening parenthesis. 3. Death. Section 46. Death is suffering. Death too is twofold, as a characteristic of the formed, with reference to which it is said, aging and death are included in the aggregates. Datuk 15. And as the severing of the connection of the life faculty included in a single becoming, with reference to which it is said, so mortals are in constant fear, that they will die. SN 576. The latter is intended here. Death with birth as its condition, death by violence, death by natural causes, death from exhaustion of the lifespan, death from exhaustion of merit, are names for it. Section 47. It has the characteristic of a fall. Its function is to disjoin. It is manifested as absence from the destiny in which there was the rebirth. It should be understood as suffering because it is a basis for suffering. Hence this is said, without distinction as they die pain grips their minds impartially. When wicked men their foul deeds see, or sign of new rebirth may be. Also when good men cannot bear to part from all that they hold dear. Then bodily pain severs sinews, joints and so on, and continues torture unbearable, which racks all those whose vitals death attacks with grip that shall no more relax. Death is the basis of such pain. And this suffices to explain why death the name of pain should gain. This is the exposition of death. Opening parenthesis. IV. Sorrow. Section 48. As regards sorrow, etc. Sorrow is a burning in the mind in one affected by loss of relatives, and so on. Although in meaning it is the same as grief, nevertheless it has inner consuming as its characteristic. Its function is completely to consume the mind. It is manifested as continual sorrowing. It is suffering because it is intrinsic suffering and because it is a basis for suffering. Hence this is said, sorrow is a poisoned dart that penetrates a being's heart, setting up a burning there, like burning with a red-hot spear. This state of mind brings future pain. C. 17. F. Closing parenthesis. Such as disease, and then again, aging and death, so one may tell wherefore it is called pain as well. This is the exposition of sorrow. Opening parenthesis. V. Lamentation. Section 49. Lamentation is verbal clamor on the part of one affected by loss of relatives and so on. It has crying out as its characteristic. Its function is proclaiming virtues and vices. It is manifested as tumult. It is suffering because it is a state of suffering due to formations and because it is a basis for suffering. Hence this is said, now, when a man is struck by sorrow's dart and he laments the pain he is already undergoing, he augments with pain born of dry throat and lips and palate, hard to bear. And so lamenting too is pain, the Buddha did declare. This is the exposition of lamentation. Opening parenthesis. Phi. Pain. Section 50. Pain is bodily pain. Its characteristic is the oppression of the body. Its function is to cause grief in the foolish. It is manifested as bodily affliction. It is suffering because it is intrinsic suffering, and because it brings mental suffering. Hence this is said, pain distresses bodily, thereby distressing mentally again, so acting fundamentally. It therefore is especially called pain. This is the exposition of pain. Opening parenthesis. 7. Grief. Section 51. Grief is mental pain. Its characteristic is mental oppression. Its function is to distress the mind. It is manifested as mental affliction. It is suffering because it is intrinsic suffering, and because it brings bodily suffering. For those who are gripped by mental pain tear their hair, weep, thumb their breasts, and twist and writhe. They throw themselves upside down, use the knife, swallow poison, hang themselves with ropes, walk into fires, and undergo many kinds of suffering. Hence this is said, though grief itself distresses mind, it makes distress of bodily kind occur. And that is why this mental grief is pain, as those that have no grief ever. This is the exposition of grief. Opening parenthesis. 8. Despair. Section 52. Despair is the same as the humor produced by excessive mental suffering in one affected by loss of relatives, and so on. Some say that it is one of the states included in the formations aggregate. Its characteristic is burning of the mind. Its function is to bemoan. It is manifested as dejection. It is suffering because it is suffering due to formations, because of the burning of the mind, and because of bodily dejection. Hence this is said, so great the pain despair imparts. It burns the heart as with feverous flame. the body's function it impairs. And so despair borrows from pain its name. This is the exposition of despair. Section 53. Sorrow is like the cooking of oil, etc., in a pot over a slow fire. Lamentation is like its boiling over from the pot when cooking over a quick fire. Despair is like what remains in the pot after it has boiled over and is unable to do so anymore, going on cooking in the pot till it dries up. Opening parenthesis. IX. Association with the unloved. Section 54. Association with the unloved is meeting with disagreeable beings and formations. Inanimate things. Its characteristic is association with the undesirable. Its function is to distress the mind. It is manifested as a harmful state. It is suffering because it is a basis for suffering. Hence this is said. The mere sight of an unloved thing brings firstly mental suffering. And suffering of body too. Through touching it can then ensue. And we therefore may recognize. Since meeting the unloved gives rise to either kind of pain, that he decided pain its name should be. This is the exposition of association with the unloved. Opening parenthesis. X. Separation from the loved. Section 55. Separation from the loved is to be parted from agreeable beings and formations. Inanimate things. Its characteristic is dissociation from desirable objects. Its function is to arouse sorrow. It is manifested as loss. It is suffering because it is a basis for the suffering of sorrow. Hence this is said. The dart of sorrow wounds the heart of fools who from their wealth must part or kin, which roughly should be grounds enough for counting the loved lost as suffering. This is the exposition of separation from the loved. Opening parenthesis. 11. Not to get what one wants. Section 56. Not to get what one wants. The want itself of some unobtainable object expressed in such passages as "Oh, that we were not subject to birth." Opening parenthesis. Viv 101. Is called suffering since one does not get what is wanted. Its characteristic is the wanting of an unobtainable object. Its function is to seek that. It is manifested as disappointment. It is suffering because it is a basis for suffering. Hence this is said. When beings here expect to gain something they build their hopes upon which fails them, they are woebegone with disappointment's numbing pain. Thereof the cause is hope they wed to something they cannot obtain. Not to get what one wants is pain, the conqueror has therefore said. This is the exposition of not to get what one wants. Opening parenthesis. 12. 5 aggregates. Section 57. In short, the 5 aggregates as objects of clinging. Now, birth and aging and each thing told in describing suffering. And those not mentioned, could not be were there no aggregates for clinging. Wherefore these aggregates for clinging are taken in totality. As pain by him, the Dharma's king, who taught the end of suffering. Section 58. For birth, etc. Thus oppress the pentad of aggregates as objects of clinging, as fire does fuel, as shooting does a target, as gadflies, flies, etc. Do a cow's body, as reapers do a field, as village raiders do a village. And they are generated in the aggregates as weeds, creepers, etc. are on the ground, as flowers, fruits and sprouts are on trees. Section 59. And the aggregates as objects of clinging have birth as their initial suffering, aging as their medial suffering, and death as their final suffering. The suffering due to burning in one who is the victim of the pain that threatens death is sorrow. The suffering consisting in crying out by one who is unable to bear that is lamentation. Next, the suffering consisting in affliction of the body due to the contact of undesirable tangible data, in other words, disturbance of the elements, is pain. The suffering oppressing the mind through resistance to that in ordinary people oppressed by it, is grief. The suffering consisting in brooding 14.